Those are the things that you have to do to win games. That's not what Creighton did this week. Last Saturday, I think everyone has heard by now everyone's thoughts about Marquette, because we're almost a week removed from that. But that was a really gritty win from the Jays. I mean, Jamiya Neal just walked down Marquette when he absolutely had to. He spent the day in foul trouble. Ryan Kalkbrenner got him to the finish line. Stephen Ashworth got him to the finish line. And Jamiya Neal, come hell or high water or 4 fouls, he was going to come off the bench and get them across it.
He's really the story, to me, of the Creighton season in a lot of ways. Just the development and the progress from here to there.
Yeah.
And early on, he was lost and didn't know what his role was, what was expected. He's a transfer. He's got a lot of dog in him. And
dog, you say?
Well, we're saying I'm not. That's not the Russian word for dog. That's the English word for dog. But he's got some dog in him, and he will take over.
Yeah.
As we saw at UConn. But it's just they've come a long way, and it was interesting that when they lost Pop, they thought, well, all was lost. But Neal's kind of got that role as the number 3 man.
Yeah.
And after the Marquette game, I was standing by the locker and watching them come off, and I saw Pop and Neal walk off together, and Pop had his arm around him, and it was kind of like talking to him, and is that next year's leader? I don't know, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. And then the things that they had done through that 9-game win streak, they had cleaned the glass. They had anchored down defensively. They had been so much better about not turning the ball over. And when they did turn it over, it was not a live ball turnover that let teams, get outlets, run the floor, finish in transition. And that's not what they did against UConn. They did not do the little things. They missed a lot of opportunities. And that was immediately Greg McDermott's takeaway after that game. And he kind of echoed that. He and Ryan Kalkbrenner kind of echoed that ahead of Friday's practice. Like you could tell that a switch had flipped compared to the team that we talked to on Monday. Like Frank Caliendo was not at Friday's practice,
why was he at practice before?
So he's a really big Creighton fan.
Why? He's not from here.
I hope I have this right. So he was in town last year to do a show at, Tom, you might know, Funny Bone.
Yep.
Funny Bone Comedy Club.
The Omaha Funny Bone, yeah.
Yeah, and so he was in town to do a show at Funny Bone, and Creighton was playing, and he said, "Oh, why not?" And so him and his son went to the Creighton game last year, and they just became Creighton fans. Him and his son were at the maybe his son wasn't with them, but Frank was definitely at the Players Era Festival in Vegas and was there for Creighton's first game, which was a 11 a.m. local tip against San Diego State. And so, yeah, he's he was doing impressions and whatnot. And the funny thing is, like, he's not just like doing the voices. He's like really knowledgeable about the players. Like Greg McDermott asked him to do the Trump impression, and he's doing it. And he's like, Stephen Ashworth, and obviously I'm not Frank Caliendo. And he's like, Ashworth, never seen a shot he doesn't like, and it's like stuff like that. Like he knows the players. So it's really interesting. But that was not the case at Creighton's practice on Friday. There was no Frank Caliendo. I usually ask Greg McDermott a stupid question at the end of every press conference, something funny like we do on the end of these episodes. And today, we're recording this on Friday. Today, I asked him what the key is to a successful Valentine's Day. He's been married for a while, so I figured this guy might know. Advice, and he laughed about it. It wasn't like stern or anything, but he was like, "I'm just here to talk basketball." And so it was like, okay, this team knew it let one slip through its fingers against UConn because it didn't rebound, especially in the second half. It blew a 14-point lead. And Liam McNeely, in his second game back after a month away with an ankle sprain, had one of, I don't know, Tom, you could probably attest to this, one of the best visiting performances in the CHI Health Center since when? Can one come to mind?
I have to think about that.
Maybe Eric Dixon last year on Doug McDermott night.
Yeah, there have been a few.
But for a freshman to drop 38 in that situation, in that environment, I mean, that's unreal.
Yeah, and in that kind of game where everybody wants to, everybody hates UConn, and that's another interesting thing. The Creighton-UConn rivalry, maybe it's social media only, but I get the feeling it has this old money, new money feel to it.
Okay.
Like Creighton, UConn, we're the Big East. You're not the Big East. You're some pretender. You're not Big East.
Sure.
We are Big East. We're and Creighton said, well, we'll show you. We are Big East, and we're gonna beat you, and we're gonna delight in beating you. That's good for college basketball. It's good for the Big East to have a little bit of an old versus new thing to it. But again, these things happen, and you don't want them to happen. But when you see a guy that could go, when a guy goes off like that, it works both ways.
Yeah.
UConn picks up confidence and picks up momentum, and Creighton stands around and watches. And, oh no, we can't stop this guy, and that's how you lose a game like that.
Yeah.
So
let's keep this in a vacuum, because we'll talk about both of these teams, or I guess just Nebraska. Creighton will finally get that bye that they've been looking for. Maybe a little out of gas, maybe a little tired. Long trip to New York City this weekend. Longtime followers of Creighton will know that Greg McDermott is about to take his, 50th selfie in the freight elevator at Madison Square Garden. You guys aware of that? No. That is one of Greg McDermott's favorite things to do, is to get a team selfie in the freight elevator of Madison Square Garden.
There are worse.
There are worse.
To
yeah,
do.
there absolutely are.
I've never seen one of those.
So there you go.
Yeah.
I think he just keeps it for himself.
All right.
Yeah. So so he'll get to take another one this weekend, and then they'll have a week off before they host Georgetown in DePaul in back-to-back games. You'd think
if they win this, they will definitely win the Big East.
Yeah, I think so too. And then Nebraska has kind of a big one in Northwestern coming up, a really prime quad one opportunity. And then next Wednesday they'll have another, because they'll stay on the road and go to Penn State. But I'm sure we'll talk about that. Let's keep this in a vacuum here, because Nebraska, again, big one on Sunday at Northwestern. And, we talked about it a little bit ago, in one of those games that's expected to be a coin flip.
Yeah. I think on paper, Nebraska is the better team. Northwestern is kind of running on fumes with the injuries they've had. Brooks Barnheiser especially being out for the season.
Yeah.
That's a real blow. But, Nebraska I will probably be missing Berke Buchtengel again, but
I would think so.
Yeah, Fred said he progressed better than expected, by the next morning, I think, the swelling had gone down and some color was returning, but that was a pretty nasty looking ankle sprain. He was in a boot last night.
I know a guy who came back in 4 days.
Yeah. But yeah, so, that's big, but I just don't think Northwestern is as big or physical. I mean, I know they're not as big or physical as Maryland. But because of that, this is one Nebraska I think really needs to have, in just trying to stay at sea level over these last 6 games. It kind of feels like Nebraska needs this one to avoid tail spinning, to hold serve with just the games they're supposed to win. I talked about probably 3 weeks ago now, Nebraska lost some games they were supposed to win, and they needed to make up for that by winning some games they were supposed to lose. They've done that by beating Oregon and Illinois and Ohio State, and now they just need to hold serve, and Northwestern feels like a big one in doing that.
What's the key to winning on Sunday? What's the key to beating Northwestern?
Get rebounds. Be the more physical team.
Yeah.
Be a pain down low, and someone's got to hit shots.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the same person. Usually it's Bryce Williams. It can be Connor Essegian. Just someone needs to take the lid off the basket from deep, because there's a just marked difference in Nebraska when they are hitting shots and when they're not. And that maybe that sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, but
Sure.
it's not just the 3 points. It's the spacing it creates. It's the movement. It's the way they play off of that. They look like a different team.
Yeah. No, they sure do. And then Creighton will have what time's that game tip off on Sunday?
That is at 1 p.m.
So an hour later, Creighton and St. John's will get going at the Garden. So by the time everyone's done watching the Nebraska game, you should be able
Catch
to
the
tune
end.
in to the
Exciting conclusion.
I don't know, final 10 minutes of Creighton St. John's. There'll be two games, obviously, as we've reiterated over the last few weeks, for two entirely different things. Like Nebraska needs to stay afloat, and Creighton is trying to rise to the top of the Big East. But in their same respect, two huge games. Greg McDermott said that for Creighton to win, they need to rebound. They need to, and that was like his biggest thing. Said that they need to rebound. They needed to limit turnovers because St. John's, as we all know, is really going to turn up the pressure defensively. Thankfully for Creighton, they've kind of had 2 games to prepare for that because they played Marquette, played UConn back-to-back, and those two teams really crank up the pressure defensively as well. So they'll need to handle that again on Sunday and limit the turnovers. And then this is the interesting one that I think these are like the hidden games within a game. Usually they go untalked about. You don't mention them. It's kind of you don't mention them unless something goes awry. It's almost like a really good offensive lineman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A good long snapper.
A good long snapper. Like, who's the long snapper? And then when one goes over somebody's head, it's like, oh my God, John Walker's the long snapper. But Greg McDermott, for the past couple of games, has very outspokenly said we need to win the free throw battle. And I think that's really interesting because, Tom, as you know, traditionally, Creighton is not a team that's going to draw a bunch of fouls. They're not going to foul. And in return, they're not going to draw a bunch of them either. But he's made it a point of emphasis to point out that they need to win the free throw battle. He said that ahead of Tuesday's loss to UConn, in which they could have used quite a few more free throws.
Well, they don't foul much, but you wonder.
And they'll need it Sunday.
You wonder in the Garden with it's probably going to be a packed house.
Absolutely.
And, obviously Patino's back. The Johnnies are back. You wonder how that game will be called. And I always wonder, teams are so afraid of Kalkbrenner. Why don't you go in and just go at him, and you might get a foul called eventually. He doesn't foul. He doesn't foul, but sometimes referees just think a big guy fouled somebody. So but teams are afraid to go in after him. And it's a huge game, and I think that they, St. John's. I can't remember the New Year's Eve game. I think St. John's played pretty well. I don't think they played great. They had a chance at the end. If they play. It depends on what they're. I did like one thing Patino said, and he put it out on X or Twitter after the game.
It's Twitter.
Don't.
It's Twitter on this podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Twitter. He said, "Don't blame the officials. It had nothing to do with them. We could have won. We need to play better. We need this." So I like the way he's set the tone there.
Yeah.
I wonder how they'll come out Sunday, and they may be okay. I'm sure he's telling them if we want to win the Big East, we have to win this game. So
Absolutely.
The other thing, Wilson, I don't know. I know they said last night Burke was game to game, or whatever that day to day, or all day to day. But don't you think they'll probably if they have? I think he probably like to hold him and hold him out another week. Don't you think?
Yeah, and I just.
Come back
unless his ankle has some magical healing properties, I think they'll have to. But
I mean, if it's iffy, and I don't think he's going to play on the road this week.
I don't think so.
I don't think he will either. But I also don't think they can afford to have him not play if he's physically able to go and isn't going to risk it.
I just think these games this week are big. But I think the home games, especially the Michigan home game, you definitely want him out for that one. You don't want him to be hurt for that.
No. That's what I would think. It's going to be a fun weekend of hoops between the Northwestern game, obviously, and between the Creighton St. John's game. Creighton's never won against St. John's in Madison Square Garden. They're 0 for 3. So it'll be a kind of a clash of Big East Titans who have come from way different points at the start of the season.
It was the same schedule last year, John.
Yeah.
They beat UConn.
Yep.
They were number 1. The fans are on the court.
Yep.
And they go to St. John's, and that was when all that McDermott contract stuff was going on. I was trying to get that figured out. And I remember they lost that game. But,
Yep. By 14.
And St. John's wasn't as good as they are now. So that was kind of an upset in a way.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was, especially in the way it happened. So Creighton's going to try and avoid that on Sunday. Or, I don't know, hop in the driver's seat and put both hands on the wheel in the Big East. That's kind of the sitch here. This will be today's pressing question. Guys, what is the key to a successful Valentine's Day? Tom, you might know better than anyone.
Well, there are roses at home waiting for somebody to get off work, and we'll go out to eat tonight, and we'll go find a place to I get her a couple of drinks. I'm a QT guy myself. I need to have this over here.
Is that where you're going to eat? Your favorite restaurant?
No. I'll probably splurge tonight with maybe they still have an Applebee's or no? I'm just kidding. We'll figure. I got a couple of things up my sleeve. Maybe. The key to a Valentine's Day is do something. Pay attention to your spouse, girlfriend, whatever. Pay attention to them, and show me you care.
Wilson?
I mean, I can't top that. I mean,
I've had a lot of scars.
Yeah.
I've been beat up a little bit.
Look,
over the years, I've spent a lot of Valentine's days in bars by myself too. So that's a pretty lonely place to be, by the way.
Yeah.
And I don't recommend it.
No love in basketball there.
Well, it depends on who's on the night, but
yeah.
Can I tell my story before we go?
Absolutely.
All right.
Real quick. You know what I think the key is?
Yeah.
To wrap this all together, I think you've got to do the little things. I think
I love the way you wrapped that all together.
I think
you got to dive on the ball. You got to dive on the floor for loose balls.
You have if you're not going to dive on the floor for love, why would you expect someone else to?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And how do you be with someone who dives on the floor for love? Well, you find someone who would dive on the floor for love. And yes, Tom, it's about the small stuff. It's about the cheesy stuff, the roses, the whatever their favorite flowers are. Grab the cheesy box of chocolates. Watch a rom-com.
It's all cliches, but they all love it.
That was beautiful, John.
Do the little things for love. Please, Tom.
Oh, yeah.
Story time.
I'm starting to get misty-eyed. Okay, this I'll go back to my basketball beat writer days for you guys. Probably 88, 89. I cover Missouri basketball. We're on the road with the other Missouri guy. I'm in Kansas City. Jim Thomas from St. Louis. Martin Fenley, another guy from the Columbia Tribune and the Missourian. We're out in Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, the night before the game. And Missouri's like 1 or 2 in the country. Colorado's whatever.
Those were the days.
They were. So we went to this place. Let's go out night before the game, downtown Boulder. There's an area called Pearl Street Mall. We went to this place and said Old Chicago. We go, that's a weird name. This is Boulder. Why is it called Chicago? Well, let's go find out. Okay. This is the original Old Chicago. You know where Old Chicago Bar?
Yeah.
The original one was in downtown Boulder. We went to it. It just opened up right around that time.
Old Colorado. Boulder.
Yeah, Old Boulder. So we go in and we're seeing. We're okay. We kind of well, what kind of beer are we gonna? And back in the '80s, there weren't all these, there weren't craft beers.
Sure.
Except, Old Chicago had 100 beers on tap, and we were like going, "Holy crap! What is this all about?" Nobody has 100 beers. I mean, back then you had like 5 or 6 different beers you could drink.
Sure.
And so we're looking at our menus, and I said, all right, wait a minute. I said, let's make this fun. All right, let's play a little game here. I said, everybody put down the menu. We're not going to know what anything is. I said, everybody has to pick a team. It could be NBA, it could be the Lakers, it could be Missouri, it could be a high school team, anything you want. Pick a team and then take the starting 5 from that team, and the numbers of the starting 5 are what you're going to drink. We're each going to have 5 beers. So we all got fired up. I said, all right, I'll start. This is my game. I'm starting. I'll take Missouri. So I took the 5 starters from Missouri, and the waitress came by, and I said, I'll take a number 21. That was I think that was one of their guards, Byron Irvin. I said, I'll take a 21. She said, great. And she took all orders. I said, I can't wait. This will be from Belgium or Argentina or, the North Pole or some
Russia.
kind of crazy beer, Russia beer, Niet, light. It'll be, Russian beer. This will be unbelievable. I can't wait to have this. She brings our orders back. She puts mine down in front of me, and I go, you gotta be freaking kidding me. Coors Light. 21 was a Coors Light. So I pounded my Coors Light. I said, all right, give me a whatever Doug Smith was. I forget his number. 34. Give me a 34.
What was that? You remember?
It was something better. I think it was from Germany. But
you went all the way
holy
to
crap.
You went to Old Boulder to taste the Rockies.
Yes! 21 was a Coors Light. You got to be kidding me. He said, take that off the board. That shouldn't even be on there. But later that year, we went to Dallas for the first round of the tournament, and Missouri played Creighton.
Huh.
Tony Baroni and Harstad Gallagher.
How about that?
Creighton played great. Missouri, again, 1 or 2 in the country. And that was when Norm got ill on the plane to Norman. He found cancer, and all this stuff was wrong with him, and he couldn't coach. So the bag man was the head coach, the assistant coach, and anyway, we go to Dallas. Creighton is running them off the court. Right before halftime, Doug Smith, their best player, hits a half-court shot. That kind of stems the tide. Second half, Missouri comes out, and I take control of the game. But little did I know that 2 years later, I'd be in Omaha. Not talking to you guys, but I would be here.
And it all started
33 years later, I'd be talking to you guys.
It all started with a Coors Light.
It did. So I wish everybody a Coors Light. Have a Coors Light this weekend to celebrate. Now, if you're ever on the road and you get to one of these bars that has all the beers, I just hope that they're numbered so you can play this exact same game.
I will. Give me the 1, 11, 5.
Yeah, you can do crazy.
0. What do I do for 0? What do I do for Jason Green? 0. Do they have a 0? I don't know.
You have to make one up.
Dealer's choice.
That's right.
Whatever you want.
Just
yeah, and then throw 23.
But you could do 3 for
3 and 4, 3, 4, 24, and I guess 9 and either 34 for Braxton or 23 for Andrew Morgan.
Drink.
Just don't look at the menu. It's got to be blind.
Anything else, y'all?
I don't think so.
Anything else, Tom?
I got a million of them, but we don't have time.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of Half Court Press. Thank you so much for joining us. If you want to read Wilson's stuff, if you want to read Tom's stuff, if you want to read my stuff, go to omaha.com or, of course, go to your local news rack, your local paper distributor, and get a paper because we'll have some good stuff in the paper this weekend. And make sure you find next week's episode on your local podcast provider. Yeah. That's going to do it for Half Court Press. We'll see you guys next time.